University Library sections, current topics, discussion groups, lightning round presentations. We have 2 wonderful talks scheduled for this afternoon. Each talk will have time for questions immediately following the presentation, as well as time at the end of our session. Please use the chat function or raise hand feature in order to ask your question. If you're not familiar with the raise hand feature, you can find it under the reaction button at the bottom of your screen. So first, we're welcoming Marianne Hansen and Megan Salisbury from Montana State University, who will be presenting their talk titled Bridging the Gap, Ensuring Digital Equity Through Wi-Fi Hotspot Lending. Welcome, Marianne and Megan.
Thank you. So, as Meredith just said, we will be talking about our Wi-Fi Hotspot Lending program, and it was funded through a grant called Bridging the Gap, Ensuring Digital Equity Through Wi-Fi Hotspot Lending. And I'm Megan Salisbury. I'm the Instructional Technology Librarian at Montana State University, and my colleague is Marianne Hansen, and she's the Research Services Librarian at Montana State University. So we've been working on this project together for over the past academic year, and we just want to share some of our successes and challenges that we've seen implementing this new program. So before I get into the program details, I wanted to share this with you. I was scrolling through the Higher Ed Learning Collective Facebook group that I've been a part of since March 2020. And earlier this week, I saw this example that I feel like fits perfectly with why Marianne and I started the Wi-Fi Hotspot program to begin with. So this tweet is talking and referencing survivorship bias or survival bias. And that's the logical error of concentrating on the people or things that made it past some selection process, but overlooking those that did not, typically because of their lack of visibility. And so this can lead to some false conclusions in several different ways, and it is seen as a form of selection bias. So the image that you see on the screen of the plane with the red dots refers to a story about damaged World War II planes. The United States Armed Forces faced a dilemma during that war because returning bomber planes were riddled with bullets, and they needed better ways to protect them. So the Army knew they needed to increase the armoring on the planes, but the question is, where should they put it? And so they took the planes that had returned and they plotted out the damage. And it was spread out, but it was largely concentrated on the tail, the body, and the wings of the plane. So this is where they were going to focus on putting extra armor. But Abraham Wald, a statistician, said that there was a glaring observation error. The military would make a terrible mistake by upgrading the armor in those sections of the planes because they were only looking at the damage on the planes that returned home. They didn't factor in damage on planes that did not return. So the planes that weren't returning were the ones that sustained damage in ways that you couldn't see. So their engines, their nose, and their propellers. And so once those were hit, the planes went down and they didn't make it back home to have their damage charted. So as the quote at the top of the tweet says, our online survey showed that all the students had the required hardware and internet bandwidth to participate in online courses. This says that the students who were able to take an online survey reported no problems getting online, but that leaves who's missing, obviously. So that's why we started looking at this program and thinking about digital equity and inclusion. So since everyone moved to emergency remote learning in spring 2020 and then continued with online learning through the current academic year, it became very clear that there's still a real digital divide between students and families who have access to a home computer and reliable high-speed internet and those that do not. I don't know if you remember this from last year with everything that's happened in between, but multiple news agencies reported that students and workers were using parking lots as workplaces so that they could capitalize on free Wi-Fi signals from the businesses that they used to frequent for the same purpose, but now could not go into. In many homes, college students were forced to share a computer and internet access with their parents and younger siblings and other family members, and it made it nearly impossible for them to complete their coursework. They were also taking on more and more responsibilities as many family members were laid off or declared essential workers and required to work while young children had to stay home. So these same student issues showed up at Montana State University. In one course that I was teaching last spring, one of my students completed the remainder of the spring semester using only a cell phone because they didn't have a home computer. And at the time, all public libraries were closed. Another student that lived in rural Montana had no access to broadband internet, and the computer that they did have had to be shared with younger siblings who were completing their grade school coursework. So because of this, assignments had to be adjusted. Things had to be sent via email so that students could actually complete the work. Information on the overall digital divide wasn't available for the MSU students, but these examples match up with the national trends that we were seeing at the time. So Marianne and I decided that we wanted to help the students out at MSU, and we applied for a Network of National Libraries of Medicine Technology Innovation Grant for $5,000. And we were awarded that grant in August. And that was to purchase Wi-Fi hotspots to lend to high-need students on medium to long-term loans. So the initial proposal was for a very modest pilot program of just 4 Wi-Fi hotspots. We felt like this would be a worthwhile project even with the low number, just to determine what student need was in the areas of digital equity and inclusion. But after receiving the grant funds, we discovered that we could purchase the hotspots using a state agreement with Verizon, which allowed us to then purchase 11 hotspots. And then we received 6 hotspots from the Montana State Library that was also doing a hotspot program. So in total, we ended up with 17 hotspots. And we started with direct marketing to student service offices and faculty across campus that worked with high need students, like first generation students, veterans, Native American students, and others. And we requested that faculty and staff refer students to our program so that we could meet with them and determine if they could use a hotspot. The program was fairly straightforward in design, but challenges did occur during those first several months. And Marianne's going to talk about those.
Yeah, so we had a challenge of a low referral rate, as Megan notes on the direct marketing portion of the slide, that we sent a message to an audience of targeted entities across campus that we identified that might have students in need to hit a broad representation across campus. Once the hotspots were ready, however, for checkout, the requests only trickled in. And then we actually had more success with our marketing and promotion when we targeted all of the college deans in January at the beginning of spring semester 2021. And we also put up a lot of signage in the library and on the library social media accounts, Facebook and Instagram, promoting self-referrals as well as referrals from faculty, advisors, and so on. And we've had more come in this way, that is students referring themselves, then the faculty and advisors actually referring them. We've also found fairly good marketing tool to be our Library Lingo newsletter, which is posted monthly in each bathroom stall throughout the library. So you can really get someone's attention through that kind of direct marketing. So, and we also have gotten some referrals within the library, and it's been just a little bit of a challenge because we have a 3-tiered system with student employees on the front line and then student supervisors during every hour that the library is open. And we actually had to do a number of reminders to students to not refer inquiries directly to me or to Megan. Rather, we built a LibGuide, and the referral form was built into the LibGuide, and it is emailed to both Megan and myself. And so it was a little clunky, and one or the other of us getting an email inquiry and having to, there could be a little delay and refer the students back to the guide to actually fill out the form to come to one of us or both of us so that one of us could respond as we're available. We're ready for the next slide.
Thank you. So as Marianne said, after we had such a low referral rate in the fall, we started to actively promote the program directly to students with the beginning of the spring semester. And we did that through emailing the deans at the college level, and then they were able to spread the word a little bit more evenly across campus. And so in January, self-referrals started coming in, especially from graduate students. And then we still did see some faculty and staff referrals. By the end of January, 11 hotspots had been checked out, and many of those were for the full semester. The first week of March, all 17 hotspots were checked out simultaneously for the first time. So we were very excited that first week of March. And again, this included full semester checkouts, as well as a range of shorter checkouts from 2 to 4 weeks. And then overall, the spring semester saw 23 unique student checkouts that included all student classifications and types. So we had undergraduate, graduate students, students living on campus and off campus, and even some students that were living at a distance from campus. Several library employees were also able to use the hotspots for special purposes, such as internet outages, travel, and conference presentations. And we had 4 of those special instances that happened during the spring semester. And even though the spring semester was much more successful, we still did experience a few more challenges.
So in addition to the challenge of getting our frontline people to refer students to the guide, to fill out the self-referral form, we also had a communication challenge of this was a unique pilot program with the checkout process outside of our normal service desk procedures. So how do we figure out how to check these out? They were not integrated into our regular tech checkouts, for which we have a whole library webpage, and those are all held behind our service desk or our front desk. We have laptops, GoPros, calculators, and so on. And since this was a grant fund with a finite end date of April 30th, and actually, as Megan noted, we got some funding to go beyond in partnering with our state library, we felt like we wanted to gather as much data as possible. And so we wanted to do student interviews, which actually turned into a form, and we would have a conversation, but they would fill out that form as part of their own referral process. So it was a little clunky at first, figuring out how we would check out the hotspots. And one of the issues that we faced was through the pandemic, we were closed for a while, and that was before we started checking them out, but people working offsite, and then most of the librarians continued working mostly offsite once the library opened up in late June of 2020. And so as students are referring and themselves or people are referring them, they need to get the checkouts. How do we divvy up the load of whether Megan or I will be the person to check it out? But since Megan lives a ways away and has the challenge of maybe 45 minutes to getting to the library with both commuting and finding a parking spot, and I live an 8-minute walk from campus, I became the primary person to meet students, do the checking out, and so on. But it's been really a good balance because Megan is lead on the grant project, and she therefore has done most of the administrative work behind it. We also had a question of where to store the hotspots. Once they were ready, we had initially stored them in a cabinet at the service desk, but that continued to cause some confusion for our student employees, especially who are only here on a part-time basis. And so we ended up keeping them in Megan's office right across the hall from my office, and we share the same key. So, I mean, we each have our own key, but it unlocks both our doors. So we finally figured that out. And Megan has noted some stories of student need or some context of student need. Montana is a big, largely rural state. Many of our students attending MSU live quite a ways from the MSU campus in areas where there's either very poor internet access or maybe no internet access at all. And we also have students who live in housing on campus and off campus with no infrastructure for internet access, or it's some of the on-campus housing doesn't have it included as part of the cost they pay. So there are those who simply can't afford it, or those who just have poor at best access. And as Megan noted, we've had some students report that they used up their data on their cell phones in order to do their schoolwork and attend classes via web conferencing, and just not an affordable or sustainable model. And as Megan noted, we've had students use the hotspots for 1 to 3 weeks at the beginning of the semester. We saw students who moved during the semester. So lots of different iterations of affordability problems, access problems, and so on. Okay, so as Megan noted, we have had 35 unique checkouts, and we should really reiterate that these were not just to single users. Most students live in households with other MSU students or with families, so mother and father and children in the local school district. So we were serving a lot more than 35 people. And students, oh, Megan lost audio, so that's why I just jumped in.
Oh, I'm back now. Sorry about that.
Awesome. So I'll let you take over.
I clicked on the microphone and it wouldn't let me talk. Yes, so we had 35 unique checkouts. We had about 2,500 gigabytes of data that were used. And you can see what that equates to with streaming video and video conferencing. And then we also had students, we requested they fill out a survey about their experience with the hotspot after they turned them back in, and 100% of the students who completed the survey said that the Hotspot Lending program did help them succeed academically at MSU. And I just want to wrap up because I know we're running out of time. Just having Mary Ann share a little bit about what students had to say in those surveys, because I think that that's the most important information that we've gained from this program.
Yeah, so in addition to the comments on the slide, one of the comments that jumped out, this was an absolute necessity for my household and should continue to be offered to students who need it. This program really saved me the last 2 semesters. If I had been able to use it spring 2020, it would have saved me a couple suffering grades as well. I was actually able to upload and watch lectures at home. And when I was quarantined, there were times that I would not have been able to participate in any classes if not for the hotspot. Please continue this program. Love it. Please continue. Again, an absolute necessity from another comment. And just overall grateful attitude.
So our quick lessons learned are, it's all about marketing. So finding every single possible avenue for marketing has been very important, and the directed emails seem to be the best way for students to find out about this. So we have received internal funding from the university to continue our pilot program through the 21-22 academic year. So we'll be continuing that, and we're planning our marketing accordingly. And you know, our marketing shows all students can benefit. The usage stats show that on-campus, off-campus, and distance students need this service. And so this is our newest marketing iteration, as students can borrow the internet. And hopefully that's been pretty eye-catching. There's these posters are all around the library, and I went in on Wednesday and I counted 5 of them just on my walk to my office. So students are definitely seeing these now. So yeah, what questions do you have for Marianne and I?
I was looking for the raised hand, and I think I ended up clapping. That's really cool. That's so cool that y'all provided that for your patrons. And really good notes. We just started a hotspot lending program, and that communication issue is definitely an issue in terms of getting the word out, but also coordinating between people. I was wondering, as far as, because I saw that y'all have 3 different brands of hotspots. Are y'all having to manage sort of the administrative settings end of that, or do you have a department within the library or ITS at MSU managing that?
We currently are managing that end of it. I went in with the 11 hotspots that we purchased with the grant funds to adjust the network names and passwords and all of that. And we pay the bills on those ones. The other, that we have 3 Verizon MiFis and 3 T-Mobile hotspots, and those come from the Montana State Library program. And so they are the ones that do the administrative work for those 6 hotspots. But I'm the person that is lead with the hotspots currently in the library.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Rebecca, is your hand raised?
Yeah, I was just curious. You said that, you know, this is continuing with internal funding. Is there, I mean, has this opened up broader conversations on campus about internet access in general for Montana? Because it just seems like this might be a real need ongoing. And I mean, I think it's great that you guys stepped up to fill a gap that was really needed and time that was needed. But I'm just curious about what conversations has this brought up on campus within the IT groups and other units?
I've been in meetings with our university IT and our academic technology and outreach departments over the last probably 6 months. And that was one of the things, that was one of the reasons that marketing and communication is our challenge, because our UIT folks said that they didn't know we were doing this until January, which was, you know, several months after we started the program. But it's definitely opened up some conversations with a variety of people on campus about the fact that students do need this, and, you know, could UIT take it on at some point? And I think moving forward, those are conversations that we're going to want to have over the next academic year. Is, can the library partner with someone, or can this move somewhere else on campus so that it can be sustained?
And one surprise for us was learning through the process of signing out these hotspots is that not all campus housing is created equally. I noted that we have some discrete little houses that have no internet access, and then we have the bigger apartment-like and dorms that have res life access, but it's separate from our central University of Information Technology. It's actually an auxiliary service provided through Residence Life, another unit on campus. And one student was a computer science major in the fall, and she said she was trying to attend all online classes and didn't have the bandwidth, and kept fighting with dropping signals and whatnot. So even on campus, in campus housing, the service has not been good. And so my hope is that, I think all of us hope that there is some sort of effort to improve infrastructure overall, and, you know, look at the big picture and who's falling between the gaps and what can we do to make access equal for everyone.
And then we do have a question in the chat from David, who asks, what type of data plan did you set up for the hotspots?
Through the agreement, the state agreement with Verizon, we were able to set up unlimited plans for the hotspots. With Verizon, they do come with the caveat that once you hit 25 gigabytes of use, your speed might be slowed down, but we didn't have anybody communicate that that was an issue that they had with the hotspots. There were a couple months in there, March and April, where some of the hotspots had almost 300 gigabytes of use, and I didn't have any students, you know, emailing or asking troubleshooting questions. So we were able to purchase the unlimited plans for those. So that is one thing to think about. We didn't realize that the state pricing was out there. That was something that the state library let us know about when they let us know about the hotspots that they were using. And so since it was like it was a statewide agreement, since Montana State is obviously a state entity, we were able to utilize that agreement. So they did it through, it's called NASPO, and I can't remember what that stands for, NASPO, and it's about procurement officer is the end of it. And so a state procurement officer had set that up with Verizon. And so we were able to utilize that agreement.
Do we have any more questions for Marianne or Megan? All right, well, thank you to both of you for your wonderful presentation. Next up, we have Jessica Keebler and Brendan Plan-Curley from Pace University, who will present on creating a staff development committee to share educational opportunities and improve morale. Welcome, Brendan and Jessica.
All right, does that look okay? All right, Brendan, I'll let you get started.
Okay, thank you for having us and for joining us today. Our presentation is creating a staff development committee to share educational opportunities and improve morale.
Hold on, there we go.
Okay, my name is Brendan Plan-Curley. I'm a reference librarian at Pace University's New York City Library. I've been at Pace for nearly 10 years, and my work involves reference services, collection development, archival projects, and more. I'm joined by my colleague, Jessica Keebler. Jessica, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, my name is Jessica Keebler. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am in the instructional services department at the library. I'm at a different campus than Brendan. And I also do reference and things like that, but mostly do instructional services.
Okay, and our committee also includes another full-time librarian, Christina Bilello, and 2 part-time librarians, Ruth Ware and David Callahan, who participate in our journal clubs and assist in creating our monthly email content. And of course, Gina Levitan, who's pictured, wasn't able to make it today, but she was instrumental in putting together this presentation with us and in all the work that we do as a committee. So before we get started, we'd like to make a land acknowledgement and positionality statement. We recognize that we're on stolen native land, that this land has been the home to the Lenape and other native communities and nations for millennia, and that we have a responsibility to be truthful about the fact and to honor the peoples who belong to this land. We are also a group of white librarians, and while we have other identities, this affords us the most privilege in how we navigate personal, political, and public spaces. This is important to acknowledge as we go forward because there are a multitude of intersectional conversations that are not explicitly happening in this presentation, but we hope that at the very least we can help open up those dialogues going forward. So a little more about Pace. Our campuses are located in Lower Manhattan, right across from City Hall and the Brooklyn Bridge, and in Pleasantville in Westchester County, 35 miles north of the city. We're a private university, undergraduate through doctoral. Though most of the doctoral programs are professional rather than academic. Our historic strength is in business and professional preparation, although Dyson College of Arts and Sciences now has the largest undergraduate enrollment. So our campuses are a mix of urban and suburban, and our students a mix of residential and commuter. About the library specifically, we're multi-campus, but we operate as a single department. Librarians do not have faculty status at Pace. We're considered administrative staff. Whereas development at other institutions is geared towards librarians, we provide opportunities to all staff members in the library, hence staff development and not professional development.
So just a little bit about the charge of our committee when it was started. It grew out of a library staff restructuring in 2018 and 2019, which really sought to unify the 2 campus libraries a little bit more. And our committee is made up of full-time and part-time librarians across all departments in both campuses. So the initial charge was to focus on identifying and coordinating development opportunities that could be internal or external for the library to consider and then promote these opportunities. So once we had our committee members set up, and this was a volunteer committee, anybody who wanted to be a part of it could, we started surveying the staff to get a sense of their needs, to create some buy-in by asking their feedback on how morale was in their perspective and what development initiatives would they be interested in. And then once we had some ideas for some initiatives that we could undertake, we made sure that the processes of the committee, kind of the way we functioned together, was really democratic. So we take turns writing the monthly email, we take turns hosting the journal club and reminding each other what's going on. And that might not work for everybody. Some committees might want to function differently, but this is what has really worked for us. So the goals of the committee once set up were to boost morale, create affordable, free, or low-cost initiatives that would benefit all of the staff, and to support staff from all library departments. As Brendan mentioned, we didn't want to just support instruction or reference or technical, but everyone, and not just anyone who was considered a librarian because they had an MLIS, but everyone. So these were the initiatives that we kind of started with to move towards those goals. So the first one was a journal club and a monthly newsletter. So we had planned early last year, this is a common story, an in-person journal club, one for each campus that would happen monthly. But with COVID, we combined into one virtual journal club. And so now we have a rotating moderator, someone who volunteers to find an article within the field and then develop discussion questions about it. And that moderator can ask someone to co-moderate with them if they'd like. And we create a LibGuide that hosts the article link every month, additional readings that might be interesting, and then the questions that were developed by the moderators for that month. And then also monthly, we create an email newsletter that contains links to articles, conference proceedings, podcasts, internal trainings, anything we think might be of interest to them. And also in that email, we have started sharing a OneDrive folder that we can link to in the email. It's kind of shared with everybody in the department, and people can submit notes to the webinars they attend, conferences, just so that stuff isn't getting lost in our personal computers. We're sharing it with one another, and everyone can check that folder as they're interested in looking for something. And then similar to the journal club, we try to schedule periodic skill shares and trainings. And on the surveys and conversations that we've had with colleagues, we've gathered suggestions for a list of topics that we're currently working through. And some of our staff are experts in certain areas, so we've asked them to host those particular sessions. We recently just had training on the MRI Simmons database in April, and we're having a few more this month as well by one of our colleagues who's really great with that database. And then lastly, we are doing partnerships with different committees that we have. For example, the library just created a DEI committee, which Brendan is on. So he's on both committees. And so we're trying to work on partnerships with the journal club and trainings and hopefully progress our department's DEI conversations. So this is just an example of what that staff development email looks like that comes out each month. It just has bulleted information with a link. And, you know, perhaps in the future, we'll spice it up a little bit, but for now, it's really easy to put together in Word and Outlook and update each month with new links. And we have an Excel spreadsheet where we collect links for each month and then someone enters them into a template. So it's been really easy for us to complete. So let's talk a little bit about what has been successful and what has been a challenge. So these are just a few that Brendan's going to go over. You know, how are we maintaining participation? How are we expanding it? What have been our issues with timing and scheduling? The survey completion that we've tried to do, and then making everyone feel welcome, because that was absolutely one of the goals of the committee. Oops, there we go.
Okay, so we had strong participation numbers in the first few months of Journal Club, which could have had to do with the novelty of being home during the pandemic and there being a new initiative. Strategies we've used to ensure attendance include varying topics to bring in different audiences, as well as soliciting topics from staff members, sending gentle reminders to attend, save the date reminders, and then week of invitations, and scheduling during normal business hours each month. As remote work continued into the summer, participation started to wane, and we saw the same group of participants each time, perhaps due to Zoom fatigue or personal challenges in vacation time or just other work priorities. So we're currently brainstorming ways in which to bring more voices into the conversations, especially as we continue with remote work, reaching out to people to co-host sessions on their areas of expertise, as Jessica mentioned. We had great attendance at the MRI Simmons database presentation recently. We also had really good attendance at a training on Wikipedia led by a guest presenter, and a journal club discussion that was co-sponsored with the Student Book Club. So while remote work helped avoid on-campus scheduling issues, since we're a multi-campus university, and it also gave us the benefit of cross-campus conversations, we had to compete for attention with so many other remote opportunities offered both at PACE and outside of it. We tried to plan in advance to give moderators time to volunteer and prep for the people, and for people to prep and add to their calendars. But sometimes too much advance notice made people forget that they wanted to participate. We also skipped a few months of trainings and journal clubs, which allowed people to take a break during busy times, but then subsequently we wondered if that hurt our scheduling flow and participation. So we've also surveyed our staff twice over the past year with only about 10 responses per survey. Our initial survey when the committee was just formed asked for guidance on what people wanted, and we had great answers, even if it was only from a few people. The second survey asked more specific questions on potential training topics, and importantly, how the committee work had specifically impacted staff over the past year. And the answers were a little vague, which was kind of disappointing. So moving forward, we thought we would have the university librarian send out surveys on our behalf, which would hopefully lead to more participation. And in retrospect, we realized that we probably should have followed up on these surveys by mentioning how we used responses to guide our initiatives.
And Brendan, I'm just thinking now, to provide some context, how many librarians would you say you think we have across both campuses? Maybe 40 to 50? And
yeah, I was just thinking.
That back, staff, not librarians, just all staff.
Yeah, I think so, about that, okay. Yeah.
It provides context for the 10 responses per survey.
Yeah, so it's like maybe 20% of staff responded to. And a success and challenge is making sure that everyone feels welcome, ensuring that our emails include content for all staff and areas of expertise, and requesting input from all staff so we're including many voices. We still need to do better at this, perhaps with more personalized requests and allowing time in sessions for all people to be heard.
So what was the actual impact on our library department that we've measured so far? These are just a few responses from staff that were on the surveys. Things like, I saw resources that I wouldn't have paid attention to. The articles provided really helped to whittle down the daunting amount of information that was out there. I think that was especially helpful in terms of some of the DEI topics that we tackled in an amazing way. There was tons to share last year, but I think some people were overwhelmed. So we were able to whittle it down a bit for them. Others said that they found the information very valuable and a good reminder to take time for personal development. That was one of the charges that the university librarian kind of pointed out to us as well, to kind of remind people to take time to develop yourself on the job, that is something that is okay with our department. And then a really important one, obviously, is engaging in conversations with colleagues that I've never worked with before or learned with together. So a little bit more about department impact, some specific items. We mentioned doing a recent survey on impact. However, we do need to do some more assessment because the committee has only been together for a little bit more than a year, and we don't have as much of a sample of the staff as we'd like. We know so far that there has been an increase in engagement across campuses. Staff are coordinating and working together more than ever, engaging in these new conversations through the journal club and the trainings. All of our Zoom sessions did help to build community during COVID, and especially at the beginning, as we were all home. It provided a way to speak to each other during this time and really have more guided conversations outside of the like, what did you have for lunch today, at our weekly or monthly department check-ins. So that was helpful. And the Journal Club has also provided opportunities to further our department's anti-racist work as we have discussions on things like white privilege or neutrality in libraries, which really hadn't taken place before. And, you know, while we have to do some more assessments, we do know our initiatives tie into the university goals, one important one being one PACE, that we are kind of uniting our library department in ways that hasn't happened before. So what happens next? Nobody knows. We do need to do some more assessment to see what people really have taken away and what they'd like to do to continue learning. And maybe we'll expand outside the concept of a survey to try some other things. And as we return to campus, we want to evaluate how the journal clubs and trainings will still take place across multiple campuses. Because as far as we know, there is a plan to kind of return to on-campus learning as normal as possible. So we want to think about that and also incorporate snacks. We definitely want to get back to that. And lastly, our New York City campus is moving into a new building. So our library will have a whole new space, and we're really not sure how that's going to impact the dynamics of working together as a team. So that's another big one. So we'd love to hear in the chat or unmute yourself, you know, how anyone else has tried staff development initiatives that have in the past or things that they may have learned trying one before. That is our link to our slides. So bit.ly/ULS staff. And please feel free to email any of us with any questions. And I'll also just give a shout out to our works cited and additional resources. These are just other staff development initiatives that we've seen around the library world that we wanted to share. I'll stop sharing. Thanks. I can't remember who initially came up with that idea. Do you remember, Brendan?
I think Susan, maybe.
Okay, so someone on the instructional services team. Yeah, because I think she reads a ton of articles, but never gets a chance to talk to anybody about it. So she kind of pitched it in a meeting. We were like,
Right.
Hey, that sounds great.
Yeah, and it worked out really well that we went remote shortly after forming this, because initially we were trying to figure out how we could do it where we're between both campuses discussing the same journal article. So.
Right. I mean, yeah, we have rooms set up at each campus with a camera and a meeting table. So we could have done it that way, but Zoom has worked out really well. And as Brendan mentioned, the student book club partnership worked well too. I worked with the president of the student book club to pick an article about the democratization of knowledge during COVID. And we talked to the student book club about it. And we had instruction librarians, we had part-time reference librarians who just have a lot of background information and knowledge on that topic. And it was an interesting idea. And speaking to someone about the journal club idea outside of PACE, someone mentioned a faculty journal club, which I think is a great extension that we haven't tried yet. Yeah, definitely. We want to try that soon. Maybe Brendan, you and Gina can do that while I'm on maternity leave. That would be great. You can talk to Pasquale.
Yeah, that would be good to do another one with the student book club for sure.
I didn't raise my hand. I'm raising my hand. I was just wondering, I might have missed this in the presentation. Did you ask for topic ideas before you started selecting articles that you were going to read together? Or did the committee just come up with some topics they wanted to cover?
I think we had a few on the survey, but some people just left that blank if they didn't have any answers. So we went with like the 2 responses that we got. And then after that, we had to kind of ad lib and fill in our own. There was a lot more responses on the trainings that people wanted as opposed to the articles, which I thought was interesting.
Okay.
We also try to solicit topics. Every time we send out a monthly email, we ask people if they have any topics that they want to see, or if they want to, you know, host or co-host an upcoming journal club. So it's kind of a constant process of soliciting ideas.
Okay.
Yeah, we had that good one from one of our part-time reference librarians. He actually suggested a podcast episode, which was kind of cool. It expands outside the idea of reading an article. I was actually thinking too, we could read or watch the recent documentary about the critical cataloging concerns. I cannot remember the name for the life of me right now, but someone can type it in the chat if you know. But expanding outside the article idea into different media is also a good idea.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, especially if there's a really timely webinar that has taken place, or like you said, a podcast or something. That's a great way to at least bring critical topics into people's view.
Yeah, a lot of time we just start with what was everyone's biggest takeaway, and we let people run with it. But then the moderators have backup questions in case we run out of stuff to talk about.
Do we have any other questions for Brendan and Jessica? All right, well, with that, I do want to thank again all of our presenters for their great presentations, as well as all of our attendees. Our thanks on behalf of the current topics discussion group. I hope everyone has a great rest of their evening and wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.